It is officially Get Your Orange on Friday. Can we pack Gallagher-Iba this Sunday or any day this year for that matter? And we also choose to celebrate the fact that Mike Gundy chose to elevate this team, this program, and this locker room by going Deion Sanders mode.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at All-Day State. Today, we're partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make the NFL playoffs even more fun right now with FanDuel, and new customers can bet $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if your first $5 hauler is a winner. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of Mike Gundy and a little bit of an adaptation. Mike Gundy, Dabo Swinney, guys like that have always been very critical of the transfer portal, N.I.L, the whole fact that this has turned into a business. But at the same time, I have been on this show talking about how I felt like those are the guys that were doing it the right way, much like BYU and Utah to some degree as well. Building up through the roster, development, high school kids, not really paying attention to the portal unless it was kind of a plug-and-play style of situation or we're trying to provide more depth. There's been, I would say, a fairly significant shift in this portal round for Mike Gundy than ever before. And as much as I did proclaim and think that Mike Gundy and Dabo Swinney were some of the guys doing it the right way through development and high school dudes, Deion kind of broke the mold. And he kind of proved that you can do a lot if you have a team full of transfers. Michigan State just did it a few years ago. I know that dude got fired, but year one, it's like 40-some-odd new players, and they're competing for Big Ten titles. They've obviously regressed since then, but it has been proven time and time again that a first-year coach can occasionally come in and make some things happen. Mike Gundy has had to kind of adapt the way that he's done business, especially recently. Firing people is not really his cup of tea, yet we've fired almost literally everybody that you can physically possibly think of from the staff. There's been some analysts and things of that nature that have been upgraded, but by and large, the coaching staff is entirely rebuilt. And I think that in and of itself has the locker room rejuvenated, reinvigorated, and ready to rock and roll for 2025. The expectations are not going to be insanely high because of the numerical disadvantages that it's going to appear we have on paper. But I don't necessarily believe that it's going to be a disadvantage, nor do I necessarily believe that this is going to be a depth style of situation. So let's take a minute to talk a little bit about the guys that we've brought in, numerically speaking, where it sits in conjunction with some of the other classes, and what it could look like for Oklahoma State this season. Now, of course, from an O-line perspective, we got Kason Carpenter from Tulsa, Lavaka Tuikeo from Weber State. Obviously, that one's going to get a little bit of an odd look. But then you got Luis Canepa, New Mexico State. And then he was able to still continue to go out and get guys that are going to be able to help on both sides of the ball. We talk about the tight ends. We have a plethora of them now with not only Josh Ford, but we brought in Oscar Hammond from North Texas. We brought in Will Money from Utah State. We also were able to kind of, make Jordan Owens, the Central Arkansas transfer, make the most amount of sense. And then offensively, I think a lot of us are going to be excited to see what Caleb Hicks could provide. I think the fact that we've got a kicker now in Gabe Penikowski that has won awards, that's gone 15 for 15 and done some miraculous things. Defensive end, you got Kyron Duhan from UTEP. That was somebody that a lot of teams in the country were trying to steal from UTEP, so that was a big get for us. You got cornerback J.K. Johnson. Now, we are going to do an episode where we kind of focus on some of the transitions from the old cornerback crew to the new cornerback crew, including some of the DBs. Speaking of DBs, Mordecai McDaniel, somebody that goes back to the recruiting days with Todd Grantham at Florida. Defensive lineman, Demaric Morris from Temple is one of those guys that isn't going to fill the stat sheets. It's not going to be super fun, pretty, and sexy, but he does his job. He eats up double teams, and he creates enough havoc. Just like the other D lineman that we got in to man the middle, Michael Diata from Virginia. A guy who you could see excel every single year of college. And obviously this most previous season was his best yet. everybody's been talking about, as we should be talking about, Haas Haney. He's an adequate young man that understands the landscape, that has more than enough ability physically to be a piece that can help transcend an offense. I think Sam Jackson, the wide receiver that used to be a quarterback at TCU, became a wide receiver. Then he goes to Auburn. I think he's just barely scratched the surface. Jalen Lloyd, he's a certified track dude that can get up and down the field in a hurry, almost in a Tyreek Hill style of situation. Jalen Davies, the DB/CB from UCLA, massive pickup. Originally went to Oregon. Now it's coming here. Trip White, a.k.a. Jalen Trip White. The dude's coming by way of Ole Miss, which is not something we're typically privy to here at Oklahoma State. Of course, you got Shamar Rigby, wide receiver, 6'3", 200 pounds, coming over from Purdue. Whenever you look at somebody like the defensive line guys, Malik Charles, Chindavian Bradley, Rashad Bradley, I think all of those guys are going to be additions that could potentially play immediately. And that is my last point here. When you're looking at a lot of these guys, we are going to do a stab at depth chart and talk about some of the depth charts that we've seen come out from Oklahoma State media individuals. But a lot of these dudes are going to be designed to start, right? Jalen Davies, he should be a starter. Trip White, he should be a starter. Jalen Lloyd, with his speed, it's going to be difficult to keep him off the field. DT Savini Havili Kafusi, I think, is going to be somebody that is a dominant force down low that can go alongside Diata and Morris and Kirkland and Aiden Kelly and be disruptive forces, but they're not coming in just to be depth pieces. Same with Mordecai McDaniel. That dude's not coming in to be a depth piece. The fact that we brought in so many tight ends, that battle in and of itself is going to be worth its weight in gold, even if we're kind of transitioning away a little bit from the fullback. The usage will be kind of reminiscent, I would say, to the idea behind the Cowboy back. Blake Charles, he's going to be designed to start. Brian McCoy, designed to start. Brandon Rawls, probably designed to start. Kyron Duhan, going to be hard not to start. Mordecai McDaniel, Shamar Rigby, Michael Diata, Haas Haney, Sam Jackson. These individuals are coming to not just be depth pieces. And that's primarily, in my opinion, how Mike Gundy used to use the transfer portal, just to fill in some pieces here and there, and then count on the guys that have been in the system for years. It's a wonderful, wonderful thought process. And when it works, I think it's phenomenal. But the landscape of college football changed so much that we obviously were forced to make a lot of changes as well. And the coaches that we brought in, like Todd Grantham, guys, Jules Montanar is maybe the best GM of the bunch. But I know some of the dudes absolutely love linebackers coach Cap Dede and Ryan McNamara. Ryan McNamara has been very vocal with a lot of the linebackers from the get-go. The fact that a lot of these guys are being engaging on social media is going to help drive some of the dollar bills. And after last season, it is going to be difficult, in my personal opinion, to get to the level of NIL that we want to get to, which we should probably talk about that, because the money side of it makes sense. And you know, Deion, he might be taking the Dallas Cowboys job, which obviously has a lot of appeal, makes a whole lot of sense. And he also went on to say that he asked Colorado for more money for NIL and recruiting, and they essentially told him no, I guess, or they ran into some roadblocks. Something like that could force his hand into taking an NFL style of job. But regardless of where Deion goes and what Deion does, he has kind of set the model that now Mike Gundy and some of the other coaches in the Big 12 are starting to follow. The question is, will the dollar bill side of it match up? We'll talk about that here in a second, because we've got other things that need matched up too. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for you to get the bank account rocking and rolling a little bit more again. This is brought to you by Prize Picks, the place where you can get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and $1 billion in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's playoffs, regular season, whatever, doesn't matter. Prize Picks has everything you need to win big while enjoying all of the action. Now that it's playoff time, there's no better way for you to get in on the action with Prize Picks right now. All you got to do is simply pick more than or less than on 2 players. And if your pick hits, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's legitimate. You heard me say it. It's not a typo. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks correctly. For me, it's all about making, I don't know, the most amount of sense with some crazy odds. So I'll be looking at somebody like Lamar Jackson to throw for more than 250 yards. I've been looking for somebody like Justice Hill to get in on the action, and maybe Tylan Wallace as well. Both of those individual Cowboys getting a touchdown. It's a possibility, a playoff possibility. Get ready to run your game this season as soon as possible. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is $50 just for playing. You throw down 5, they give you 50. That's how this works. So don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. This is your time to shine. And it is also your time to run your game. Get with Prize Picks today. All right. So now we're back to the action. And yes, this is kind of a segue from the fact that Deion Sanders is asking Colorado for more money. Now, originally, I thought that was kind of an outlandish request, but then I kind of did some digging and looked up the Big 12, earnings for N.I.L, or at least the projections. And it is a little bit difficult because schools like Baylor and TCU don't have to, nor necessarily should they, report things all the same way. But nonetheless, Oklahoma State is not in a terrible spot, but I wouldn't say that we're necessarily in a great spot either. We're hovering right around the same as Colorado when it comes to NIL spending, which was kind of mid-pack. Oklahoma State was 9th in the Big 12 in spending, while Colorado was 10th. So, we spent $5,300,000 and some change. They spent $5,300,000 and some change as well. At the top of the Big 12, it's Iowa State. Iowa State spent almost $8 million in NIL. Like, I had no idea. I mean, good for them. Followed by KU. I mean, that makes sense. They've always had blue blood basketball money that they've wanted to be able to use for football. They just never really had much of a reason. Followed by Utah at $7,252,000. K-State, 7.1. Texas Tech, 6.9. Arizona, 6.4. Arizona State, 5.6. West Virginia, 5.5 basically. Oklahoma State, Colorado, 5.3. Cincinnati, 3.9. UCF, 3.3. Houston, $2 million. Houston, they need to get the Fertitta dollar bills station rocking and rolling a little bit better. That's not going to cut it. But Colorado also has 3 of the top 5 or 6 highest paid NIL individuals in the conference. They have some of the highest earners in the country. Now, I know Deion Sanders and Travis Hunter, some of that is because of the name and just the things that they brought over from Jackson State, and Deion wanting Shedeur to prove that he could do at this level, which he has been able to do. But as you look forward to even next season, Oklahoma State just got behind the big NIL wave. When I say big NIL wave, that's pretty big for us, especially when we were somewhat fighting it. Our coaching staff, to some degree, was not very open arms about the NIL, transfer portal, and all that fun stuff. Then we did find a way to team up as a fan base. And we paid several guys like Ollie and Nick and Colin and Bowman to hang around, including all of the offensive linemen. And what I'm seeing a lot on social media now that Chad Weiberg is essentially asking for more money from everybody, and he has a target goal of like $21 million. I got a screenshot here. Let me read that daggone thing. All right, from Chad Weiberg. This message is not intended as a call to arms, but as confirmation of permission for all of us who love Oklahoma State to take full control of our destiny. We have accomplished much. Oh, my phone messed up. We have accomplished much thanks to the hard work and dedication of so many. However, it is accurate to believe that our best days are still lying ahead. But if we come together and seize this incredible opportunity, Oklahoma State remains determined to compete for championships in the Big 12 and at the highest levels of college athletics. To do so, we will need to have access to an additional $20.5 million annually. Number one thing we will do is we will take a hard look at our operating expenses. If something doesn't improve our competitiveness, recruiting, or generate revenue, it'll be reviewed. Secondarily, campus support will be key. President Shrum has been a leader in supporting OSU athletics throughout conference realignment and our shifting landscapes. She, along with the Board of Regents, believes in the value of athletics in the campus experience and in OSU's mission. So it's not necessarily a quote-unquote call to arms, but it is, right? Let's just call a spade a spade. We need more money. And you got Deion asking for more money, even though I think them in Arizona State have spent the most and got the most thus far in the transfer portal. Could be a little bit off on that. But to my knowledge, Colorado doesn't really have an issue spending in the NIL department. So asking for more, to me, is kind of wild. But when you're hovering around the 9th, 10th place in the Big 12, then it kind of does make some sense, especially when you take into consideration that Iowa State is spending that amount of money. Like that's wild. Additionally, like the number one SEC spender in NIL at like almost 23 million was Texas. The lowest SEC spender in NIL was Mississippi State. And they would have been, they would have been like 4th or 5th in Big 12 spending. So the last place SEC team would have been like 4th or 5th in spending for NIL in the Big 12. So clearly it is something that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. We need to have somebody make a major run towards an NCAA title for the respect level in the Big 12 to climb, which we haven't got there yet. And Chad Weiberg specifically talking about getting more money for Oklahoma State NIL and giving a dollar amount, that's fine. That's dandy. I love it. But you are seeing a decent number of people. I know social media can not be a great barometer, but there's a lot of people saying, I did pitch in and we won 3 games. I did support multiple players and they didn't produce. So if this is a business and we as fans are looking at it to some degree as an investment, there has to be a good ROI, return on investment. Thus far, that has not happened. So to be pitching NIL when thus far the NIL we have come up with literally did absolutely nothing. It was a massive waste of money. It caused a ton of complacency, which equaled a bunch of laziness. And the result was a 3-win season. So fans are jaded, as they should be, in trying to spend more money for NIL when we finally all pulled together and put, enough to be in the top 10, and it didn't work out. So if everything stayed status quo, their chances, in my opinion, of getting more NIL were slim to none, and it didn't make sense. But shifting to all of the firings and all of the new coaches and all of these transfers, you're talking 20, 24-ish dudes thus far. 2022 after spring, we ended up having like 25. So I think we'll eclipse that. We're losing 60-ish% of the roster. So there is going to be a lot of holes to fill. But again, I think that Mike Gundy is not just bringing in pieces. He's bringing in guys that he feels like can competitively compete to start immediately, which I think is something a little bit different. That has shifted. So the coaches are gone. So it's not status quo. So maybe getting back in the NIL game does make some sense. And you have to stay competitive. But to me, if Mike Gundy or Chad Weiberg or anybody is making a pitch to get more NIL dollars, you got to have a spring game. You have to be more publicly available. You have to be more transparent, in my personal opinion. If you're trying to move the needle for dollar bills after one of our worst seasons in 30-some-odd years, and the guys who did get major dollars were either hurt or they weren't able to contribute a whole heck of a lot, the return on investment right now is absolutely horrendous. So it is kind of preposterous to be asking for more money. You got to give something. Firing all the coaches, that is worth more people getting involved. But we need to have eyeballs. We need to build excitement. I was disappointed this previous season. Not that it worked out, okay, but I thought we were absolutely atrocious in any semblance of a Heisman campaign for Ollie Gordon. I mean, the dude just rushed for over 1,700 yards, won the Duck Walker Award, and we didn't even try to pitch him getting in front of eyeballs. It's an odd deal, and it's hopefully something that we can have a correction for. But as NIL is directly associated with Oklahoma State, there's definitely enough intrigue to garner more interest, okay, with all the coaches and all the transfers. But you also have to do a little bit of politic and sales pitching. You've got to get Oklahoma State out there. More Pat McAfee stuff. That would be great. More of the ESPN, the interviews, the things of that nature. It's going to be imperative to building this NIL. And then lastly, you have to make the fans be a part of it. That is my biggest frustration with Oklahoma State is the fans are very excluded from a lot, not just information, but just, I don't know, being part of the program or feeling like you have connections to players. That stuff equals more season tickets, more dollar bills for NIL. And for whatever reason, we're just not doing a whole lot of that. Thankfully, this year, we don't have a Heisman guy to be pitching. Okay. So that's nothing I can be complaining about right now. But we do have more than enough talent to make this thing interesting. But I think you've got to sales pitch a little bit. If you're asking for more dollars, you have to give something in return. Give us a spring game. Stop letting Mike Gundy and anybody else hide from the cameras and keep the marketability down. It doesn't make sense. We have to adapt. We have to evolve. We have to overcome. And we're starting to do it. It appears as though we're doing it. But we could do more. You know it. I know it. They know it. And it's not about NIL dollars. It's about connection with the fans. That's all fans want. They want to feel a connection, some connection. Like even when you're a kid and Pistol Pete comes up to you or the cheerleaders, help you out or you get a t-shirt thrown to you, those things, for whatever reason, they grow legs and they establish more diehard fans. We need to do more of that. And then ask for more NIL dollars. Speaking of dollar bills, you already know FanDuel is the bee's knees for all of your needs when it comes to capitalization on monetary gains. FanDuel makes NFL playoffs better for you and more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if your first bet is a winner. That is 300 bones back in your pocket, in your wallet, whatever the case may be. FanDuel is the easiest app to navigate that gives you a variety of bets to choose from. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for winnings. There's no second guessing. Whether you're betting on the favorites or you're looking to add some extra excitement by betting on the underdogs, in the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com today to get started with the $300 back in bonus bets with a $5 winning bet. Make sure that you go to FanDuel.com. If you're first, a $5 hauler is a winner. You're going to have this opportunity. Don't miss it. And don't miss out any of the playoff action with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Get in on the action today because it's not going to get easier. It's only going to get better. All righty, so we'll roll in again here. The Cowboy Wrestling program, thank you, David Taylor. It's kind of the shining light right now. Men's basketball is probably roughly what we thought it would be. I did think that the defense would be more chaotic, but other than that, I mean, offensively and the depth, it's kind of what we are. We kind of knew what we were. Women's basketball has been phenomenal. They did drop one the other day, but that was wild too because they were down by 26 points, which, yes, I did bet $1 when they got down by 26, and I was this close to 15x in my money. They almost had it. Staley Hurd had a shot as the buzzer was sounding to tie it. Good look, right? But it didn't quite go in. So we lost to Houston, which should never happen. Houston is not on the same level as we are. We just decided for 3.5 quarters we weren't going to play ball. And then it got frantic. It got hectic. Same with men's basketball. They got down by a decent amount, and they made a pretty good-sized run to make it close a few times, but not enough to close the gap. So wrestling is the draw. And I know people were complaining, or they have been complaining, about how sad it is to see 8,000 people in Gallagher for wrestling, but we can't do it for basketball and this and that and the other. Part of it is just the buildup, of course. When you hire somebody like David Taylor that sends massive, earth-shattering waves all around the country, you're going to draw interest. And now when you're good, you're going to draw more interest. And when you're good enough to somewhat compete for a national title year one, you're going to draw more interest. The excitement level in Gallagher, as I've said before, is an experience. If you haven't experienced, you absolutely have to. The question is, are we going to sell out Gallagher at all this season? Unfortunately, at the end of the year, we do have the biggest duel of the year, hands down, by far, not even close, is Oklahoma State versus Iowa. And, of course, you've got Iowa, kind of trying to poke fun at Oklahoma State and Penn State. But other than that, there's not a massive matchup still yet to sell out Gallagher. But that's because we're that good. So we should pack out Gallagher this Sunday in the blackout against West Virginia. And we're going to have the low single, Mr. Kelly, on to talk about it a little bit later. But I hope we pack it out. The question is, we have 2 more events in wrestling in Gallagher, and we have a lot in basketball. Do the women's basketball team have an opportunity to sell out Gallagher? Probably not. Could we get 9,000 in there for women's basketball? I think so. I think it's a possibility. Men's basketball, we're just too up and down, and we get beat by too much when we do lose to really garner a whole lot of excitement. So I would be very surprised if we got over 8,000 all year in men's basketball and women's basketball. I mean, it is possible we could eclipse that. But wrestling is the calling card here. Wrestling is the saving grace, which is okay, because Ed Gallagher was the wrestling dude who made that court something before Henry Iba got involved. So it is fitting. It does make sense. It is exciting. And if you're one of the fans that are questioning why would we have more fans for wrestling than all the other sports inside Gallagher, just go Sunday. That's all I can say. And what's even crappy about it is there's hardly any competition. Like, it is madness that there's such a huge gap between Penn State and then a pretty good gap, Oklahoma State, Iowa, right there together, neck and neck, and then a huge gap. Like, the rest of the top 10 is horrendous compared to the top 3. It's just weird. It's weird that there's so much parity in so many sports, but wrestling, not necessarily so much. I mean, you have teams like Michigan, Mizzou, Ohio State, Minnesota that occasionally pop up. I know Cornell was popping up not too long ago as well. You're not seeing a lot of that. It's legitimately Penn State, O State, and Iowa, and then everybody else. And the gap just seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you have a David Taylor and you have a Cale Sanderson, and I know Brands is obviously big time as well. When you have those names, it makes sense. Those 3 teams are going to corner the market, and it's not going to change. Now, after this season, we're going to have the ability to win a natty. Penn State knows it. Like, their fan base is soaking up this season. They've got way too many point scorers for us or Iowa to literally catch them unless something crazy happened or injuries, which you don't want. But after this season, Penn State's reign on controlling wrestling for the last decade is likely over. And they know it. Iowa knows it. That's why they're trying to poke here and there and talk about attendance. And I don't know. We can talk about attendance too. And we need to talk about it after we sell out that gorgeous palace that deserves to have the rafters filled to the brim. Anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. Next episode, we're going to talk about Ollie Gordon. Does he fit in the top 5 all-time at Oklahoma State running back history? It's a loaded list. So we'll talk about that. We'll have a few guests. We'll talk about wrestling with the low single. Until then, That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it, star, share, whatever. You know the drill. Do what you do. All righty. Later, taters.